From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, coming to you live from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, let's take a look at the latest headlines. Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin arrive in Kazakhstan. The two leaders will lead the two-day-long summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Taiwan urges China to release a fishing boat carrying 5 civilians. Taipei accuses the Chinese Coast Guard of seizing the boat near the waters of the self-governed island. Kenya arrests almost 270 people for participating in anti-government rallies. Police officials say the detained protesters are suspected of having criminal backgrounds. Floods in the South Asian nation of Bangladesh inundate homes of more than 1 million people. The country's weather officials warn of heavy rainfall for at least 2 more weeks. And Japan eliminates the use of floppy disk from all government offices almost 2 decades after they were phased out worldwide. This as Tokyo aims to achieve a long-awaited milestone of a modern bureaucracy. We begin in the Middle East, where a growing rift between the Israeli military's top brass and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has now spilled out in the open. Reports say the leadership in the Israeli army has different plans for the war in Gaza. The Israeli military's leadership reportedly wants a ceasefire in Gaza, even if Hamas is not completely removed from the Strip. The generals believe that a permanent ceasefire would be the quickest way to free the remaining hostages that are still being held captive by Hamas. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu is pledging to continue fighting in Gaza until Hamas is completely defeated.
Unnamed officials are briefing the New York Times today. They say Israel will be willing to end the war before achieving all of its goals. I don't know who these unnamed officials are, but I am here to convey unequivocally that this is not going to happen. We will end the war only after we achieve all of its goals, including the elimination of Hamas and the release of all our hostages. The political echelon defined these goals to the IDF, and the IDF has all the means to achieve them. We do not give in to the winds of defeat, not in the New York Times and not anywhere else. We are imbued with the spirit of victory.
Now, reports further state that the Israeli army is keen on stopping the Gaza offensive amid an ammunition shortage, this as it prepares for a military campaign toward the north against Hezbollah. Now, the chief of Israel's armed forces dismissed the allegations of ammunition shortages and ordered his troops to prepare for the next phase of fighting.
This is a long campaign because we do not want to leave Rafah with the infrastructure intact. When we move to the next phase, we will adapt appropriate measures for that phase, bring new tactics, provide logistical support in a different way that fits that phase. And all these things ultimately are focused by our determination, perseverance, and patience, wearing down the other side and accomplishing our missions.
Now, despite the initial halt in sending ammunition, the United States has begun the delivery of thousands of heavy-grade bombs to Israel. Now, this comes after Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant visited Washington just last month, where he met with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And now Prime Minister Netanyahu will also visit the United States later this month, where he'll meet President Joe Biden and address the U.S. Congress. Now, White House officials have confirmed that the Israeli Prime Minister will be in Washington on the 24th of July. The meeting between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu will come against the backdrop of Netanyahu accusing the United States of deliberately stalling Israel's offensive against Hamas by withholding the delivery of weapons and ammunition. However, it remains to be seen whether President Biden will in fact embrace Netanyahu's visit or raise the issue of Israel repeatedly ignoring Washington's concerns about the killing of innocent Palestinians in Gaza. And here in the United States, the Democratic Party remains split after President Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump just last Thursday. Now, while President Biden's inner circle calls it a bad night, polls, however, show that 3 in 4 Democrats think President Biden should actually step aside. Democrat Lloyd Doggett of Texas has become the first sitting member of Congress to call on President Biden to withdraw from the race. Meanwhile, senior Democratic leaders, including former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, remain firm in supporting President Biden. Now, the commander-in-chief says he was severely jet-lagged during the debate after having recently flown from France to Italy and back to the United States. President Biden says this is not an excuse, but an explanation for his performance at the debate. Meanwhile, the White House says that the debate performance does not mean that President Biden is unfit for office.
We understand that it was a bad night, and the president has spoken to this, and he understands that. And so I cannot speak to anything beyond what I just shared. The president has regular annual physicals that we release in a thorough report. We're going to continue to do that. I don't have anything else beyond that.
Now, as approval ratings for the 81-year-old president continue dropping, a recent poll shows that the Democrats are now favoring Vice President Kamala Harris over President Biden to run for the White House. The poll also indicates the vice president holds a commanding edge against even Donald Trump, especially among women and young voters. Now, all eyes are on the Democratic National Convention, which will be held the 19th and 22nd of August in Chicago. Democrats had hoped the convention would be about a show of unity behind President Biden. Now, however, concerns of a possible brokered convention are in fact growing. This would involve a presidential candidate nominated through the process at the convention itself, rather than using the more common approach of picking the nominee who has secured the most delegates in the primaries. Now, as the Democratic Party's recriminations over Biden as nominee continue, Republican Donald Trump hauled in an astounding $330 million in the last 3 months, beating the Biden campaign, which had amassed almost $265 million. Now, presidential debates often do not influence the results or the voters. However, with the election just 4 months away, the Democratic Party and President Biden are staring at an uphill battle as they try to recover from that hellacious night on June 27th. And moving to Europe, today marks the end of campaigning in Britain. Tomorrow, voters will head to the polls to cast their ballots. The outcome will reveal whether Prime Minister Rashid Sunak will defy the odds to retain his position, or if Labour Party leader Kier Starmer secures the post to become the next prime minister. However, just 24 hours before the election, a new controversy has arisen surrounding the Labour Party chief. According to the report, Starmer received over $96,000 from British donors during the last parliamentary session. In addition, as a lifelong fan of Arsenal, he received complimentary tickets to see matches against Manchester United, Manchester City, and Porto. Furthermore, he also got tickets to England's Euro 2020 final defeat to Italy, attended singer Adele's hometown concert in Hyde Park in 2022, and received 4 invites to see Coldplay perform last summer. The report revealed that the 5-figure sum is among the highest claimed by any member of parliament in the last 5 years. Now, defending his actions, Starmer emphasized that there was no conflict of interest in accepting hospitality. and the freebies he accepted had been duly declared.
The Conservative Party has got nothing positive to say as they go into this. I've been arguing throughout this campaign, you'll have heard me many times saying they haven't changed, they're just the same. They're just in this negative, desperate loop. And it is really desperate. My family is really important to me, as they will be to every single person watching this. And I just think it's increasing desperation, bordering on hysterical now.
Now, time and again, Starmer's backstory during the campaign has garnered him sympathy, where he repeatedly cites his father's humble background as a toolmaker. Now, on the other hand, Prime Minister Rashid Sunak has been under media scrutiny for his privileged upbringing. In fact, a few weeks ago, the British Prime Minister came under heavy criticism when he claimed that he went without lots of things as a child, including cable TV. So, will Britain buy into the whole privileged versus humble story, or will there be a twist in the tale on Election Day? And now moving to Latin America, Chiapas has transformed into a hotbed of violence in Mexico, with drug cartels, militias, and armed groups wreaking havoc in the once tranquil southernmost state. Shockwaves were sent across the nation when at least 19 bodies were found in an abandoned truck in the region on Monday. A cross-border rivalry between Mexico's powerful Sinaloa cartel and a Guatemalan drug gang is being blamed for the massacre. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has deployed the army and assured civilians that the federal troops would protect the population. However, the area continues to see a spree of mass killings. Our next report takes you inside the carnage.
A viral video featuring a tangle of bloodied bodies lying in a dump truck is making rounds in Mexico. Officials say these are the victims of a gunfight between Guatemala's Jalisco gang and Mexico's powerful Sinaloa cartel. At least 6 were identified as Guatemalan and were allegedly shot dead. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador called the loss of life lamentable and blamed it on a confrontation between the two armed groups.
There are 2 groups. What motivates this? Well, drug trafficking and also migrant trafficking. In other words, human smuggling.
The president, whose 6-year term ends on October 1, has previously disputed estimates from US officials and others that up to 1/3 of Mexican territory is under the effective control of criminal groups. And even though Mexico's outgoing president has assured protection for the civilian population, the situation continues to remain dire.
There was an unfortunate confrontation in the state of Chiapas, in the border zone with Guatemala. 2 groups have been confronting each other for some time. Information was provided yesterday, and we will continue to provide it. We are protecting the population of the region.
The Sinaloa cartel and its cross-border rival, the Guatemalan Jalisco New Generation cartel, is said to be battling to control lucrative smuggling routes in Mexico's southern state of Chiapas. The area has become a prime trafficking corridor for cocaine from South America as well as migrants from across the world who enter Mexico from Central America en route to the United States. This lure of illicit profits has drawn the cartels to the scenic zone of jungles, mountains and rivers, driving out scores of people from their homes.
I was born here. My grandparents are here. My parents are here. They are buried here. But we have to leave because there is no life. Honestly, it makes me sad. I have been married for 40 years. My children are already professionals, bless God. What am I left to do? We can't live with this anxiety.
While the Mayo in Chiapas is often described as a battle between the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels, experts explain that some gangs are allied with larger groups while others are semi-autonomous. Last month, the U.S. Justice Department alleged that Mexico's Sinaloa cartel conspired with the groups based in California that were tied to Chinese underground banking to launder drug trafficking proceeds of over $500 million. The municipality of La Concordia in Chiapas, where the bodies were found, has seen waves of violence in recent months. A spate of attacks on mayoral candidates and their entourages in Chiapas in the run-up to last month's elections left at least 16 dead, including a 28-year-old woman running for mayor in the region. The Mexican government says it has deployed members of the National Guard and the army to the area. However, residents complain of feeling abandoned and that the cartels return as soon as the federal forces leave.
And our final story is about an ongoing war of words in South America. Bolivia has recalled its ambassador from Argentina after President Javier Milei called last month's coup against the Bolivian president fraudulent and orchestrated. Brazil and Venezuela have taken sides in the matter and called Milei's comments repugnant. Meanwhile, Bolivia's former president adds more fuel to the fire by claiming to have proof that the soldiers who took part in the coup had fake bullets and weapons. Our final report gets you the latest on the diplomatic standoff.
On the 26th of June, Bolivians woke up to an unexpected crisis. A disgruntled army general who had been sacked recently from his post attempted a coup against President Luis Arce. The armed rebellion was led by General Juan José Zúñiga. He ordered his troops to storm the presidential palace, but the coup was quickly foiled and General Zúñiga was arrested. Hundreds of supporters of President Arce reached the palace. They protested the coup.
We will never allow that the people of El Alto to take lives, to spill blood or have to be in mourning. Yesterday, we saw tanks leaving compound. These tanks should be on the borders protecting the integrity and sovereignty of the Bolivian people.
Eventually, at least 30 troops along with their coup-leading general were arrested. However, after being detained, General Zúñiga said he was ordered by President Arce to carry out the coup. And shortly after that, the mudslinging began. Opposition leader and former President Evo Morales said soldiers who took part in the coup had fake bullets.
What kind of coup was it? The coup started while the minister happily strolled around Plaza Murillo. A coup with 0 injuries, 0 shootings, 0 deaths. There were some injuries due to pellets. A coup with pellets?
Very soon, the Latin American community began taking sides. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva condemned the coup. He also said it was time for democracy to prevail in the continent. However, the Argentinian right-wing President Javier Milei had a completely different take. Without naming him directly, Milei called Lula the perfect idiot. He also called the events in Bolivia a self-coup. In retaliation, Bolivia summoned the Argentine ambassador, while also recalling its own ambassador from Argentina.
The Foreign Ministry of Plurinational Bolivian State energetically rejects the unfriendly and reckless statements by the Argentine presidency on June 30th, referring to a failed military coup on June 26, 2024. The government of the plurinational Bolivian state has decided to call the recently appointed Argentine ambassador to our country to state an energetic rejection from the Argentine presidency of Javier Milei.
Meanwhile, Buenos Aires hit back at La Paz and said that President Milei was only agreeing with Bolivia's former president, Evo Morales.
The fact that a person of such importance for Bolivia as Evo Morales has said that he uncovered a certain modus operandi at which we should have to pay attention regardless of the unfolding of the events.
After Argentina's comments, Venezuela also took sides and criticized Milei for his allegations. The coup has divided not only the Latin American community, but Bolivia too. People are raising doubts on President Arce, and some are believing that the president orchestrated the coup against himself to gain sympathy as the nation faces a crippling economic crisis.
We see the news but don't understand what has happened. Since I was a girl, we've had coups and we lived hard situations because we couldn't even find bread in the streets.
What the government is doing is very wrong. During the previous government of former Bolivian President Evo Morales, at least we had dollars, there was movement, prices didn't increase a lot, but now things cost triple.
The coup in Bolivia may have ended, but it has ignited a diplomatic war among South American nations. And it looks like the coup in Bolivia has more layers to it than just a frustrated army general.
That's all for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden. How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.